Pokemon Communication has been a card that players have loved having in the game since its debut in 2010. It has a simple effect. Reveal a Pokemon in your hand and put it onto the top of your deck, then search your deck for another Pokemon and put it into your hand, shuffling your deck. Unfortunately though, it hasn't seen a reprint since Team Up almost 5 years ago. In the new card, Perrin, while seemingly being a stronger version of Pokemon Communication due to it being able to put back and search for up to 2 Pokemon, being a supporter card really damages the playability of the card. So that got me thinking, with rotation coming up for the standard format, powerful item cards such as Battle VIP Pass and Level Ball leave the format, and the seemingly balanced Buddy Buddy Poffin and the re-release of the A-Spec Master Ball slated to assist these hits. How healthy or unbalanced would Pokemon Communication be with a reprint, and how would decks adapt with it? Before we go into it, I want to talk about the previous impact that the card had in past formats to put some perspective on why the card could see a reprint. Back in 2010, when the first card came out in the base set for Heart Gold Soul Silver, it didn't really see the most use, as most decks were compensated with better search options for the time, like SP Radar, Luxury Ball, and the powerful supporter card at the time, Pokemon Collector. Given the speed of the game and how many better alternatives there were over Pokemon Communication, this makes the most sense for its playability being as low as it was. However, fast forward to 2011 when Stage 2s were dominating the format, Pokemon Communication was immediately bumped up to a 3, even 4 of in some decks like the Truth. Granted, that played Vileplume, so it made the most sense to cut down on the item-based search, but it was still a great way to search for all of your unique, different lines of Pokemon while conserving the others for later in the game. During the 2011 format, decks like Reshiram Emboar, Reshiram Typhlosion, and Yanmega Magnezone were dominating the format. Now, I bet you're asking yourself, well, what was so different with Stage 1 seeing higher play than Stage 2s that made the playability of Pokemon Communication higher? This is also a case of lack of good search options for Pokemon, and Pokemon Communication being really good in evolution-based decks, aiding their massive consistency issue compared to big, basic decks. While yes, we also still had the powerful supporter card Pokemon Collector and even Pichu to allow both players to search their deck for as many basic Pokemon as they wanted and put them onto their bench for no attack cost, but having an item-based search option at that time was extremely strong and what really defined evolution decks at the time. When we look at the following year, Pokemon Communication saw a huge decline in play. Why, you may ask? Well, with the release of the next sets, Next Destinies and Dark Explorers brought quite possibly the most dominant big basic deck of all time, being Mewtwo Darkrai. Those decks wanted to abuse the newly released Ultra Ball to discard Dark Energies, to Dark Patch, and potentially hit turn 2 to even sometimes turn 1 knockouts. The deck also had access to Dual Ball, which flipped 2 coins, and for each head you searched your deck for a basic Pokemon. The only real meta deck I could find that used Pokemon Communication heavily was Excelgor Chandelure, which needed a ton of moving pieces and specific Pokemon to function, which made Pokemon Communication's inclusion obvious. It's also worth mentioning that in 2013, Pokemon Communication also saw some play in decks like Gothitelle Excelgor, also known as American Gothic, and the Empoleon deck. But outside of them, never really saw the light of day, as the previous statement followed for the next year. Fast forward 7 years to the 2019 World Championship. This was the first time in Pokemon TCG a rotation had occurred right after the Pokemon National/International Championships. This rotation saw the loss of Ultra Ball for the first time since its release, which was huge for decks. Decks like Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team and Pikachu and Zekrom, however, had no trouble adapting naturally, having cards like Mysterious Treasure, Cherish Ball, and Electromagnetic Radar to search out their respective Pokemon and having a way to discard them. However, even with all the search options, they still saw the need to play a couple copies of Pokemon Communication to search for the other options that aren't searchable by the previously stated cards. The COVID-19 pandemic unfortunately took over the last couple of years of Pokemon Communication's legality, but in those years we had massive online tournaments like the Players' Cup and Limitless Qualifier. In this time period, we saw the reprinting of Quick Ball, which was errated to discard a card from your hand and search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it into your hand. That almost immediately shifted the meta, allowing faster decks to floodgate the format. However, in the end, we saw decks like Lucario and Melmetal, Zacian, and Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX take over the two major online tournaments, both representing Pokemon communication in their decks to assist consistency. Now, taking a look at the top 4 Champions League Charizard list, this is a great example of what we're going to see moving forward into rotation for Charizard. As shown, Charizard still remains the undeniable best deck in the format. With Pokemon communication in the deck, it would allow players to conserve some of their one-off pieces or Pokemon in general you might not want to commit to a discard for cards like Ultra Ball or Lost Zoned for Lost Vacuum. This also allows an extra search for options like Lumineon V or Bibarel, which is something the deck sometimes tends to struggle with and notoriously has in the past because you want access to your Charizards with your Ultra Balls. Another deck to look at that would improve with the inclusion of Pokemon communication in the format would be Chien-Pao. Now I bet there will be some of you who's like, Chien-Pao is just a brick in general, you need too much for it to be meta relevant without Battle VIP Pass. Well, that may be true given time. Battle VIP Pass is the only card rotating from traditional Chien-Pao lists. Pokemon communication would also allow the player to have not only an easy way to find the basic Pokemon with access to Foreign S-Ball and Ultra Ball, but another easy way of searching out the key piece of their deck, Excalibur. Pokemon communication is also great, being an item card search option that can also thin your hand to Bibarel and conserve the rest of your Pokemon from superior energy retrievals or Ultra Ball discards is really, really nice for the deck. Lastly, we're going to look at the deck that takes probably the biggest hit with rotation, that being Gardevoir. As we can see, Gardevoir loses a huge chunk of its consistency item search options in Level Ball, Battle VIP Pass, and Fog Crystal. While there are builds that didn't need Battle VIP Pass to succeed that did well, those lists also played heavy Level Ball and Fog Crystal counts to compensate. While we also lose some pivotal Pokemon for the deck, we're going to talk about that in another video. Gaining access to Pokemon communication in the deck would probably be game changing. It would allow you to play 4 Pokemon communication, 3 to 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, and a heavier count of Artisan for added consistency. This would allow mid-game refinements, easier having a way to search out Kirlias with the absence of Mirage Step, but also discarding Pokemon you might not need for that specific matchup and conserving the ones you would need. While losing Fog Crystal is a little bit of a blow since it was also an easy way to search for Psychic Energies and Pokemon, we can only imagine the inclusion of Earthen Vessel or Letter of Encouragement would take its place in the inclusion of Pokemon communication. So what are my thoughts on a Pokemon communication reprint? I think this would be healthy for the game and help aid some of the Stage 2 decks that are losing pieces they need to keep up with the big basic decks in format. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on Pokemon communication reprint? Could it have a place in the meta and save the lack of search items issue? Or would it flop and have little to no impact? Thank you everyone for watching, and if you like these kinds of videos, let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll evaluate other cards that can make a comeback, or if you have one you'd like talked about yourself. Until next time, see everyone later.